Okay, really excited to do this review today. This is for Wars and Soldiers in the Reign of Louis the XIV in the early reign. And this is covering the Imperial Army or the Army of the Habsburg monarchy. Wouldn't become known as the Austrian or Austria or the Austrian Empire until after the War of Austrian Succession. Anyway, that's an aside, but this is by Bruno Mugnai and published by Helion Press. And I have to say up front, I had seen some reviews online and on some posts on the miniatures page about some issues with Hellion books and proofreading and translating, especially with this author, Bruno Mugnai, because he has published some books on the Ottomans from them, which I have not read. And some other people were saying there were some issues because he's Italian and he writes in Italian, and people weren't quite sure how Helion is translating this exactly. Some people were suggesting that they just kind of run it through Google Translate or something like that, and so there's some issues in the text. And I have to say up front, I did see some issues with that, with some like titles not being correct, like just not, and things like that in the footnotes. And I don't know if that's an oversight on the publisher's part or the author, but it doesn't make the book unreadable. The text, for the most part, is pretty clear, but every so often you do see some problems like that in it, and it's just not. If someone's self-publishing or a very small press where they're like a 1 or 2 man operation, you can sort of see like where that could happen. But anyway, not to make this a complete bashing video, just a problem I noticed. And this book was a little earlier than I wanted to with my Austrian project that I've shown on the channel, but still a really great book. So this is going to cover, like it says, 1657 to 1687. So the wars with against Louis XIV and the army at the time of the famous Siege of Vienna in 1683. And so, like any probably overeducated historian, I went to the back of the book and took a look at the footnotes, and this is a nice appendix as we're flipping back. That's got many of the regiments raised, so that's quite impressive to do a database like this of all the regiments and that sort of thing. So let's take a look at, and it even has some uniforms, which he says in the book that it's actually really difficult to find good information on the details about the uniforms. That was one of the research problems that he encountered, which I really liked that he examined that. It's kind of what you tend to find in academic history books, where they actually get into some of the problems with the scholarship that they're trying to address. But as you can see, many of these are filled in, but a lot of them are blank, and we don't know exactly what the uniforms were. You might not be able to see that, but this is one of the pages. So, yeah, so you can see that. So really useful from a wargaming perspective, but also historically. I mean, this alone is very impressive, but there's also a lot of other good, great parts of this book. But anyway, that was an aside. Go back to the bibliography. So this is a select bibliography. So he did, and I don't know if you can. Let's try and zoom in on that a bit. So you can see his archival sources. He's used some printed chronicles from that period. You've got some other documentary sources. and I guess this mostly looks like 1,000 Years of the Hungarian Art of War. I'm going to try and find that. Anyway, but you see you've got some secondary sources, Imperial Army, the Reichsarmy, and then some secondary articles and essays. So I think, with a someone that is not like a academic historian and may not have access to like a big research library for this kind of topic, this is really impressive. But I mean, in Europe, it's probably a little bit easier because as an Italian author, it's probably not that difficult to go get these sources. But for an American, very hard, just in terms of the logistics. So, and he's used some Italian sources as well, which is an interesting contribution. And so let's go to the table of contents, and we have Helion and Company, and and the author is Italian, as I said, and zoom out again, you can see. So the book essentially covers, you get an overview of the House of Habsburg, you get overview of the Imperial Army, the different infantry, cavalry, artillery. You get a pretty good discussion of the military frontier, the Militärgrenze, militia, the Imperial troops, as in the troops of the Holy Roman Empire. You get, and then several of these campaigns. So Poland, Ottoman, I believe 1663 to 64. I believe that's the siege of Kanisa in Croatia, I want to say. Insurgencies and rebellions, duel on the Rhine, the siege of Vienna, and then what people might be most interested, you get a discussion of the uniforms, equipment, and the appendices that we kind of flipped through already. But the book is really nicely laid out. I mean, those sort of typographical issues aside, I mean, the book is printed on nice glossy paper. The binding for a paperback seems nice and sturdy. And I mean, the history itself is quite good. No issues there that I can see, at least. And the pictures in the text are quite nice. So plenty of photos inside the text, a lot of contemporary images and paintings. And let's see. And then the Mugnai also did the illustrations. He did the illustrations. So you get these really fantastic color plates as well. So this is like mid 17th century troops. So kind of interesting, still kind of like the 30 Years' War style here, but you can see the Baroque sort of fashion starting to come in with that sort of style of coat. You still got the pikeman, matchlock musket, at least in this example, and some more later in the century. The Austrians, or the Habsburg troops, had to hang on to matchlock muskets for quite some time. They were kind of a pauper empire in some ways, which is interesting. Grenadier, but these are really fantastic plates. No complaints at all. Nice, very colorful. We've also got some of the Hungarians, so the Hajduk's, got some of the Croat cavalry. These guys are some of my favorites for the Ottoman Habsburg frontier. Really neat. They've got that Turkish style of dress, that longer kind of coat, and the curved sword. I'd really like to get some eventually. As you can see on the channel, I've really got way too much to paint, but down the line, I'd probably like to get some of these guys to represent the Hungarian infantry, Eastern infantry for the Ottoman Habsburg Wars collection I have. And then you also get some of these really nice color plates of some of the various banners that they used. Really, really, out of all the armies, I think I really love the Imperial and Catholic League banners. Very lavish. Got these as well. Eagle, a lot of variation. That's kind of interesting. And then these are the saddle covers. Some more flags. You've got a map of these are the recruiting districts, I believe. I haven't fully read the book like chapter by chapter yet. That's what this map is, I think, but I'm not sure. Get some real standards, and that's the last color plate. But there are other pictures throughout, and he also discusses it's just really hard to find like details like what the soldiers wore, what colors they wore, because a lot of that was kind of just taken for granted and not really recorded. Other than, in fact, there's one chapter that I read that was quite interesting and said that, we know a lot about what the Imperial Army colonels were buying because it was still up to them because of the receipts that still exist. But there's really very little information quite often about what those jackets looked like or what color they were, which I thought was kind of interesting that, you can say we know what they were, in terms of how much they were buying, the types of garments, but not really details about them, which I find quite interesting. And Siege of Vienna. So this is a really great book, and I know I opened with some of those issues, but I have to say this is pretty impressive, and it's this is one of those things that there's very little in English that's easily accessible. You can go on academic databases if you have access to that and find some stuff, but quite often even those historians aren't as interested in little, or what they would say the little things like what did the soldiers wear, where were they getting their equipment from, what were they, what types of equipment were they wearing. But I mean, this book is really excellent for all those details, and it's in English, which is a very impressive achievement, I think. And I think I will probably give Helion a closer look. Like I said, I had kind of been leery of buying it, but I jumped in with this book because this is like the only accessible English language text on this period and this topic, and I was not let down. So again, like I can't say enough. I highly recommend it. Other than those caveats I mentioned, but if you're interested in wargaming the Habsburgs, or just interested in this era of military history in general, I strongly recommend it. You're not going to be disappointed with the actual content of the research. It's quite good, and so can't really say much more about it. I think there might be a follow-up for the later Imperial Army. I have to check, but I will. This is still really good. A little, like I said, a little earlier than the project I had intended, but quite a good book, and well worth the $30. I mean, it's just a nicely made book as well. Nice glossy pages, plenty of pictures and color. So, all right, with that, I will wrap it up, and I hope you enjoyed it. And like I said, definitely check this book out if you are interested in even maybe not just the Habsburgs, if you're just interested in the later 17th century in general, I think this will, there's a lot of interesting information about geopolitics, European geopolitics in general, and military technology. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.